but something in me was deeply stirred. I was just weeping in the back of this room, not knowing why I'm crying. And I just finally realized, like, I'm a Jew. Uh, Torah is the inheritance of our people. I should be learning this. I need to know what we're all about, who I am. And the way to connect to God for a Jew is through this.
Welcome to Ordinary People with Extraordinary Stories. I'm Chana Weisberg, host of this podcast. Joining me today, we have an incredible couple who are our guests today, Sal and Nina Litvak. Thank you so much for joining us. They are the people who have come up with the platform, the Accidental Talmudist. They host it, they write it, they play it, they teach authentic Judaism. They are also screenwriters and filmmakers, and they have just come out with a new movie about a Chabad rabbi who had called Guns and Moses, if I'm correct. Yes? Yes. Okay. So they have a fascinating journey and a fascinating story, and they're here to tell it to us. Welcome, both of you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Hannah. We're thrilled to be here.
It's an honor.
Thank you. So let's start with a little about your background, because I guess it's always the background that gets us to where we become. So let's start with one of you. Let's start with, or both of you, how you got together and what your background is.
Oh, go ahead, honey. You want to get started?
Okay, I'll jump in. So just the basics of me. I grew up in New York, in a very bohemian household. My parents were both artists, and I lived in Soho, downtown Manhattan. Our family, I knew I was Jewish on both sides, but we were like so many Jewish American families. It had just been lost over the generations. There really was no Jewish observance in my home at all. But I was always super curious. I always knew, like, I'm from an ancient tribe. What does that mean? To age myself here, I can tell you that back in those days, there was no internet. There weren't Chabad houses all over the place. There wasn't one at my college. So it was just this kind of yearning to connect with what it means to be Jewish, but there wasn't really any way for me to do that. So
Right.
that's kind of spiritually.
You were kind of spiritually seeking, but you didn't really find any answers.
Yeah, and I didn't even know where to look. I mean, it was, growing up in New York, it's probably still the same thing. All of my friends were Jewish, and nobody went to synagogue, lit candles. There was just this feeling like, well, we're, way too sophisticated for that. So that was kind of the milieu I grew up in, without traditional values, without much Jewish identity. But I will say, to my parents' credit, they didn't raise me with Judaism, but we did not have a Christmas tree. That was something they felt really like that was their line in the sand. Yeah, that was their line in the sand.
Did you miss it? Did you feel like you were missing out as a kid?
No, I didn't feel, like I said, most of the people I knew were Jewish. But in retrospect, it's kind of sad that I and so many other young Jews, we weren't taught anything about the beauty of Judaism. It was just, well, you can't celebrate this holiday that everybody else loves.
That's
what
kind
of like all it meant. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, Sal, you have a similar background. Is that correct?
And in some ways, yeah, definitely disconnected, but for different reasons. I came to this country when I was 5. I was an immigrant from Chile, where I was born. So was my father and my grandfather were all born in Chile. And my great-grandfather came from Ukraine, and how he ended up in Chile, we don't know.
Do you remember life? Do you remember life there, or were you too young when you came?
I definitely remember, and I still have relatives there, and I've been back a bunch of times. The life in Chile was very nice. It's very Hamish, which is not probably the word that they would use, but the idea is it's all about going to each other's house and having a cup of tea and chatting. The Jewish community is small, but very connected and often related. And it was
very
sweet.
Family oriented.
Very family oriented. And on my mom's side, she was Hungarian, survived the war. My grandmother carried my mother through a concentration camp as an infant. Absolute miracle story. My grandfather was murdered at Dachau.
I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 second. So Sal's mother was born in Hungary in May 1944. Yeah. The Germans marched into Hungary in May 1944. So the enormity of the miracle of her survival. Yeah.
Yeah, She was
Tell us a
born
little
in
about that.
a little temporary ghetto. She was born into a small town called Kartsag. And what the Nazis would do, by the time they got around to get to rounding up the Jews in Hungary, they were very good at it. They had practice, they had skills, they were organized. And so they would send an SS guy a few weeks in advance. He would get a list from some local Jew hater of all the Jews in the town. They would gather them all into one central place, often like the gym at the high school or something like that. And then they would wait for the train cars. And so it was while they were gathered into that temporary ghetto that my grandmother was 9 months pregnant. They took her to the hospital. She gave birth to my mother, and they were back in that little ghetto the same day.
Wow.
And in fact, there was a German soldier who took pity on her and said, tomorrow they're going to put you in two lines. Make sure you stand on the right side. And then that next day, there were two lines, and my grandmother's family and her whole family were on that right side line. But there was some cousin who was a teenage boy who had a girlfriend who was on the other side. And she was with her parents, and he was like, come over, and she wouldn't. So he ran over to be with her. No one really knew what those lines meant. Some soldier had said, stand on the right, but who knows what that means. So this boy went over to the line on the left. His parents followed him, cousins, uncles. And pretty soon the whole family went over to that line. And they were saying to my grandmother with her newborn baby, come over here. And she said, they told me to stand here. I'm going to stand here. And so she and her parents and her newborn baby stood on that line. The other line went to Auschwitz. Her line, it is a miracle. They went to do farm labor, picking crops. The Nazis were hungry in 1944. They needed food. And somehow this lady with a newborn baby was allowed to do the slave labor of picking crops.
Wow.
Eventually the crops were picked, and that's when they ended up in Theresienstadt. Her parents were with her. And
with her baby.
With the baby. And then my grandfather, to help his daughter keep her milk up for the baby, gave her most of his food. And they made it until the Russians liberated the camp, but he was so weakened that he died about a week later. And my grandmother, her husband, so she was Magda, her husband was Imre, and this was a great love of the ages. And so when she found out that he was dead, it was just so tragic for her. And then there were, after the war, there were so many weddings, many Jewish weddings. People lost their spouses, lost their children, getting married, starting over, filling the world with Jews again. And she danced and celebrated at many of those weddings. But for her, there was only Imre. And so she would wait to be reunited with him in the next world. And it ended up being something we just always knew about her. After the war, they went to Budapest, and, it was better because it was only the Soviets, not the Nazis, but it wasn't much better. Then in 1956, they finally got out and followed a relative who knows why. He went to Chile. There was some kind of opportunity there. And that's how her side of the family ended up in Chile. And then my mother met my father. I was born. And then the Chilean people elected a communist president, Salvador Allende. And the Hungarian side of the family said, yeah, we've seen this before. We know how it ends.
Time to get out.
We're out.
Been there, done that.
Right.
And that is how we ended up in the United States. And so when we got here, my parents were definitely not religious, but we ended up settling in New City, New York, which is near Muncie. A lot of people have heard of
Which is right
Muncie.
around the corner from me, where I give my class every Monday night. Yeah.
So you certainly know it well. And a lot of people have heard of it. At that time, New City was all Jewish and not religious at all. I've heard that's changed as Muncie expands. But we did join a conservative synagogue, the big synagogue, 1,000 families, the kind of people, when they go, they drive on Shabbat. And I went to Hebrew school 3 days a week, and I had a bar mitzvah. Here's the sad thing. They never talked about God. It was not spiritual. It was some kind of obligation, chore. I wasn't into it, and it seemed like nobody around me was into it. But you go because this is what we do.
Mhm.
Um,
So that's
and
where you
now,
have a similarity, I guess, in your backgrounds. You both kind of had this Judaism, but nothing that was really appealing about Judaism, just a Judaism that was kind of the don'ts and the do's and the don'ts, but nothing that really was spiritually enticing.
I mean, I had no Judaism, nothing,
No Judaism.
nothing at
No.
all. His
Ah,
family was
okay.
yeah,
much
yeah,
more.
yeah. I mean, to their credit,
You guys were proud
my
Jews.
mother and my
Yeah.
grandmother did light candles
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
every Friday.
Uh-huh.
And then, my dad made just a very quick break for oven and a mozzarella minaretz, and,
Oh,
and
wow.
and then we were
Okay,
into
so you
the
did have
dinner.
s
But
But
we
they
did
right.
do
had a
that.
very
We
strong
did do
Jewish
that. We had a
identity.
very
My
strong
family
Jewish
is just
identity,
totally assimilated. Yeah, so
and
Totally.
yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. But it was not spiritual. And the sad thing for me, and I think there are a lot of people like this,
mhm,
like I was very interested in God.
Mhm.
And it's funny, I didn't come to it from any kind of religious perspective. I was kind of a science guy. I was very much into reading science fiction. I did very well in school, and especially in my science and math classes. And as a rationalist, it
Mhm.
seemed to me absurd that this whole universe would burst into being for no reason, out of nothing.
Wow.
Like that's
Interesting.
just
Wow.
that's a
Doesn't yeah,
crazy.
makes sense, right?
It doesn't make any sense,
Right.
and so to me, even as a child, it seemed like, well, the universe must have been wanted. It was
Mhm.
willed by the only kind of being that could, want and will it into existence. That would be God. So God must be interested in the creatures, and I'm sure He would appreciate that
Mm.
the creatures are interested in Him.
You sound
Um,
like Abraham, who, like, as a little boy, was looking for God.
right.
Uh,
Wow.
I think so. I mean, it just seemed natural to me. But since they weren't talking about that in Hebrew school,
Mm.
I ended up, I never went to other religions, thank God, but I was just very interested in mysticism and mystical practices. Eventually, in college, I got into meditation. I was on the rowing team. That's a very mystical sport when you get this perfect synergy and synchronicity with the other
Oh,
rowers.
rowing, interesting. Because I was like, "What? What's that?" Like, "How's that spiritual?" But yeah, I hear that
Oh, very
now.
much, very much.
Yeah,
That eight
right.
guys have to be so synchronized that
Synchronized.
sometimes something develops in the room or in the boat that's sort of higher than all of us.
Interesting.
I got into drumming, Afro-Cuban drumming, and when that gets really going, there's like this feeling in the room that's more than just people playing the music. I got into Grateful Dead shows and other kinds of related experiences.
Mm.
Martial
Uh,
arts.
and martial arts and endurance sports like I ran a marathon, and in all these practices I
So
was
these
just
all sound
looking
like very earthy, though, kind of spirituality, like, it's spirituality, but grounded in a certain sense, no?
in a
It's
certain way.
not like
I guess what was common to them is I understood that sometimes you could have flashes of
Mhm,
inspiration, and there's just certain moments when everything is just right. Sometimes just in nature, and it's just so peaceful and quiet, and you have a
mm,
flash to that higher world. But other
mm,
times it takes repetition and showing
mhm,
up every day
mhm.
to get to those moments.
Like a lot of
Um,
discipline.
yeah, yeah, I was certainly willing to be disciplined. If I wasn't before rowing, that showed it to me. But I was even into bicycle racing in high school. Always a little bit off the beaten path. I wasn't your football, baseball,
Mm,
basketball type of guy, but willing to put in the time. And so that that stood me well, as you'll see later in the story. Um, I'll mention in college, Nina and I, another similarity. She went to Columbia, I went to Harvard. So we really relished having great professors, and we were both English majors. And so
that's
one
where the
thing that,
writing comes from all the filmmaking, screenwriting, Accidental Talmudist, all that writing, right?
yes,
Yes.
yes. And then a class that I took at Harvard was the Bible as literature.
Mm,
And so we read the Bible like a novel, from cover to cover, and talking about the literary tropes. And it's in the English world, English literature world, it's just considered reservoir literature. So many
mm.
writers refer to the Bible, so you need to know the Bible in order to understand
Well,
what they're talking about.
It's the best-selling book, right?
of all time.
Of all times, yeah.
um, and so when we did that, there were stories there like Genesis 34, the story of Dinah going
Mm,
out and meeting the prince of Shechem. And he takes advantage of her, either seduces her or full out rapes her, but falls in love with her and wants to marry her and asks his father to arrange the marriage with Jacob. And Jacob is very unhappy about this, but he doesn't decide exactly what he's going to do. And while he's figuring it out, his sons just step in, take charge, make the deal. We can intermarry with you all, but you all need to be circumcised, or we can't intermarry with you. And so all the men of Shechem, and the prince of Shechem must have been an incredible salesman that convinced all his countrymen to do this.
Or he just had total power.
Oh yeah, total power.
right. Dictator, sure.
Exactly. And then they all get circumcised. And while they're recovering from that, Shimon and Levi go into the town at night, murder every man, or kill, let's say, kill every man, and take all the women and children as slaves, and they leave a ghost town.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm reading, and we certainly never read that story in Hebrew school.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm reading this, I'm like, how is this our origin tale? Like, this does not make the Jews look good. How does this make the Jews look good? And I didn't have a rabbi in my life to discuss that with. And in fact, shortly after college ended, I went to a wedding of a Jewish boy and a non-Jewish girl, and they found a rabbi to perform this ceremony. And it was like a beautiful outdoor wedding, lovely tables and buffet under these towering eucalyptus trees with giant ravens in the trees overlooking the ocean. And I saw this rabbi sitting by himself, after the ceremony and during the meal. And I came over and I said, Rabbi, may I join you? May I join you? He says, sure. And I said, I'm troubled by something. And I retell that story of Dinah and Shechem. And then I say, so Rabbi, how does this story make the Jews look good? And as I reached the question mark, look good, one of these giant ravens in the giant eucalyptus tree dropped a giant bird poop on my shoulder, all over my jacket. Or as they say in the movies, bada bing, all over my Ivy League suit. And the rabbi looks at me and he says, there's your answer. And he gets up and goes off to the buffet. And, what I got from that is that, I guess rabbis don't have answers to tough questions. And it's a shame because it would be another 10 years before I would connect to Yiddishkeit. And so I've given a lot of talks over time, often to Chabad rabbis and their communities. And I always say, you may be having an off day, but if a Jew comes to you and asks a question, that's a very important moment. And you got to be present and be ready to interact with him.
You never know what question will just lead to really being turned on or really being turned off from Judaism, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, what got you both into, being interested in authentic Judaism, really being interested in finding and discovering the deeper meaning of Torah? Like, how did it happen? You spoke a lot about your, being turned off from it or not being exposed to it or not finding it. What was the seed that actually caused it to blossom in both of you?
I guess I'll trace a couple of threads. One is I'm on a lifelong search for truth. Truth is incredibly important to me. And we live in a world of lies and just phoniness, pretension, fakeness. I just have I'm allergic to it. I'm allergic to lies. So I just have a really deep craving for what is the truth. And also from as long as I can remember, starting maybe at age 5, I had this really strong feeling somebody up there likes me. There's some force that I could just feel, and I felt like there's a warmth and a benevolence towards me. And I kind of assumed that everybody felt that way. Maybe everybody does. I don't know, but I always felt it very strong. So I felt connected to God, and I was looking for truth. And it just always seemed to me, and the people around me were dismissing, oh, Judaism, it's just these crazy rules. Religion is for morons and weak
Mm,
people. And I just thought, so for thousands of years, all of my ancestors have been morons and weak and stupid. It just didn't make sense.
mm,
It's just, what? No way. And I would see rabbis with long beards, and I would just thought, I can't just dismiss this person. It clearly seems like religious Jews have some kind of wisdom and truth.
mm.
But it took a long time for me and for Sal on our journey to really become fully religious. We were flailing, didn't really know, where to go. There's, as you know, there's a lot of fake Judaism. There's a lot of just misinformed, well-intentioned, maybe Jewish leaders, but there's just a lot of fakeness, and so it took us a while to wade through all of the various different kinds of Judaism we were exploring and trying to get down to, okay, well, we have to keep Shabbos, we have to keep kosher, we have to have a learning schedule, we have to find a Rav, etc. So it was kind of a long journey, but always going towards trying to get closer to Hashem, trying to get, yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, it seems like you both had this belief in God. You both saw Sal from a more rational and you, Nina, from a more benevolent, kind God. Did you ever call out to God? Did you ever pray to God? Did you ever say, God, help me, direct me? Or was that not part of the God that you understood?
I did never know. I don't even think it occurred to me. I never did call out to God. Did you? Before becoming observant, I don't think I ever really did. I didn't know any prayers. I never heard Shema, but that visceral crying out to God, I don't think I ever did that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was visceral and crying out, but I would talk to God.
Mm.
And I guess it's something I've always done even before I got religious, even before I really connected. Is give me a sign, give me a sign, God.
Mm.
I always wanted to I wanted to feel like I'm on the right path, and I would
Did you
ask for
did you ever
signs.
get any signs?
Definitely, definitely, quite a few actually, and
When you're looking for signs,
when you're looking for it,
yeah.
exactly. Now I say to people, God is speaking to us constantly in the language of events. You just have to tune in and listen and ask, what is he saying to me by the events in my life? But in my case, I had some unmistakable signs. Um, well, one of them was, I went to, when we got to this country when I was 5, and my parents said, what is there to do in America that means you're successful? And they asked around, and so they said to me, you're going to go to Harvard and be a doctor.
Right.
And I said, okay, because I was 5.
Right.
And I stayed on that plan. But when I was at Harvard, I realized I didn't want to be a doctor. So I went to law school. My dad
So
said,
a
just do
lawyer.
it, get the degree.
Right.
It'll always be useful, even if you don't want to use it. And I heard that. He surely thought that, well, if you go to the trouble of getting a law degree, you'll remain a
You'll
lawyer.
use it. Right.
But I really, it was in law school where I started thinking, who am I? What am I? And as I really did that journey of discovery and a lot of writing and journaling, and then a friend of mine went to film school, and I just didn't even know that existed. But once it came across my radar that you could go to school to learn how to direct movies, I said, I'm doing that.
Mhm. Oh.
Uh, and I only applied to one school because I had some loans from law school. UCLA was like the best film school that's a state school, and they were only taking 18 out of 700 applicants. I had no business
Mm.
getting in, but I said, God, if I get in, then it shows that it was meant to be. And somehow, with God's help, I talked my way into UCLA. And when I arrived for the MFA directing program, I knew I'd come home, and this is what I was supposed to be doing. And it was while I was in film school that my mother called and said, "Come home," because my grandmother was at the end. So Magda, that I told you about earlier, and her great love with Imre. I grew up with her. She lived in our house always. I was very close with her Hungarian cooking, and she was waiting for her husband all her life. She sounds saintly, and she was, but she was also hilarious. We used to laugh
Mm.
so much. But at this moment, she was at the end of her life. It was a melanoma, actually. At the
Mm.
end, she was 88 years old, and we were all sitting around her bed, holding her hands, telling her how much we loved her. Her breathing became very labored. And then this isn't always the case, but that time when she took her last breath, we knew.
Mm.
And so everyone's crying and I love you, I love you. And then something pulled my attention away from her face and to the middle of the room. And it was like the air shimmered and then something opened. And I was looking through this opening and I saw her, not sick with cancer, but the way I knew her, this wonderful older woman. But she was moving away from me and towards someone. And I recognized from photographs my grandfather, Imre.
Mm.
And I thought, oh my God, this is the moment she's been waiting for her whole life.
Mm.
I can't believe I'm seeing it. And then the weird thing was, she didn't want to go. It's like a puppy being dragged across the kitchen floor. And I'm like, why doesn't she want to go? And then I get it. She's embarrassed. She's an old lady. He's this young, handsome man that she last saw 53 years ago. And she feels like, embarrassed about how she is. And he reached out and took her hands and pulled her to him and they embraced. It got brighter. Then she was young again. And then there was this just unbelievable love drenched embrace. And then it got really bright and they were gone. And I'm like, just stunned. I didn't know what to do with that. But when I got back to LA, I said, okay, well, I need to honor her. And what does a Jew do? I guess you say Kaddish. So I'll go to a synagogue and say Kaddish for my grandmother. And I went to a big conservative synagogue like the one I grew up in. But the rabbi that day was a gifted teacher. He's quite famous, actually. And I was like, wow, this is better than my college classes. I'm really intrigued by what he's teaching about. And then the singing was also very moving. They had a melody that the cantor of that synagogue, Sinai Temple in LA, had written a melody for the Lador Vador, right, from generation to generation. I didn't even know enough Hebrew to know what those words meant. But something in me was deeply stirred. I was just weeping in the back of this room, not knowing why I'm crying. And I just finally realized, like, I'm a Jew. Torah is the inheritance of our people. I should be learning this. I need to know what we're all about, who I am. And the way to connect to God for a Jew is through this. And if it was boring the way I've seen it before, it's not because the Torah is boring. It's not because Jews are boring. It's just because I wasn't ready. I wasn't open to it. I didn't find the right teacher. And now I need to start, getting around to the business of connecting with God through Torah. And that's when I started learning and taking classes. And, thank God there's wonderful rabbis in LA. Very quickly, I connected with Schwartzy, Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz, who came from Chabad and had his own organization, Chai Center. He became a dear friend. We started going. We were together at that time. We had met quite recently, actually, and going to Shabbos dinners by Schwartzy in Olivia's house. And every rabbi I took a class from, sooner or later, usually sooner, would mention the Talmud. So I was very curious about the Talmud because clearly it's filled with wisdom, the wisdom of the Jews, but how to access it. Because whenever I would go to the Mitzvah store, which is a Judaic and bookstore, then at that time on Pico Boulevard, and I would see the Art Scroll Talmud. And for people who are old enough to remember Encyclopedia Britannica, these large burgundy volumes that, the wisdom of humanity in 23 volumes. And the Art Scroll Talmud is the wisdom of the Jews, 73 volumes. It's just so big. And I didn't go to yeshiva. And I was like, I don't even know if I'm allowed to read it. Kabbalah,
it's intimidating, right?
40.
So intimidating, right?
Talmud, you have to be a rabbi. I don't know. And so I would look at those books, be curious about them, get intimidated, think it's not for me, walk away. Repeat that event probably a dozen times over the next years, until finally, and during that period, we got married, right? And started to set up our home. And I mean, we had a beautiful Jewish wedding. And by then, we were just very into to being Jewish and going to Shul on Shabbos, even if we were in the beginning driving there. Um, and I'll come back around to the next part of the
We
story.
spent quite a few years driving to Shul.
Yeah, sadly.
Let's be honest
Sadly.
here. It was a very long, slow journey.
It was a long
But
journey.
you were involved. You were getting more and more involved in
Yeah.
your Judaism. It was more and more important to you, in
Yeah.
practice, in actual practice, not just
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
theory. Yeah.
And we were definitely part of a community. We were there
Mhm.
every Shabbos.
Yeah.
Then we had kids, and we sent them to a JCC preschool, and then a conservative Jewish day school where they learn Hebrew right from the beginning. And by the time they got to high school, they went to an Orthodox school. So that kind of traces our development a little bit.
So I'm curious how the Accidental Talmudist, which has over 1 million viewers, how that
Well,
became, how that was born.
2005, I was in that store, like I said, probably for the 12th or 13th time, looking at those, the volumes of the Art Scroll Talmud. I think I'd like to read that, but I wouldn't know where to begin. I don't know if I'm allowed. I didn't go to yeshiva. I guess it's not for me. Start to walk away, and something stopped me. And I said, this is ridiculous. I was an English major at Harvard. Nina and I are book people.
There's not a section of wall that doesn't have bookshelves.
In fact, we don't have enough bookshelves, and we've given away so many books over the years just because we don't have enough room for them.
Yeah.
Sounds like my husband. Right.
So I thought, they're just books. There must be a book one of the Talmud. I'll just get that, see what it's like. What's the big deal? I opened up the nearest one, see the top table of contents for the whole Talmud. Okay, book one is brachas. Brachas. So now I'm walking over to the counter, and I'm feeling very good about myself. I'm buying the Talmud. Put it down on the counter, and the kid at the register says, you're doing Daf Yomi. So I said, what's Daf Yomi? And he looked at me like this. For those listening and not watching, he lowered his glasses to the tip of his nose and looked over his glasses at me as if to say, are you kidding me? So I thought, Daf Yomi must be a code. If you don't know the code, you're not allowed to read these books. Now he's got to get rid of me without embarrassing me. It's so awkward. And he says Daf Yomi means page of the day, and it refers to a program where people around the world are reading the entire Talmud on the same schedule, 1 page a day. It takes 7.5 years. And today is day
to complete
one.
The whole cycle, right?
Yes, it takes 7.5 years to complete the whole cycle. And that day was day one.
Was day one. Well, what are the chances?
7.5 years. I mean, so think about it. Like if it was month one of the 7.5 year cycle, that'd be amazing.
The chances are 27-11-1.
Exactly. If it was week one, it's like a miracle. But it was in fact day one. When God wants you to get a message, he can make it very clear.
Right.
So I said, okay, God, I get the message. I'm doing Daf Yomi. Now, a lot of guys who probably look like your husband and have the beard and the hat and the yeshiva education start Daf Yomi, and they don't finish because it's such a big commitment.
It's a huge undertaking.
Every single day.
Every single day.
Huge undertaking, right?
Yom Kippur, you're getting married, you're sick, you're traveling. Doesn't matter. Do your Daf.
Right.
I heard that you're not supposed to learn alone. So I looked it up. Okay, there's 3 kinds of Talmud classes, Shirim. You can learn it in Yiddish, not for me. You could learn it in Hebrew, not for me. You could learn it in English. Okay, great. So I went to the English Talmud class, and the rabbi came in and started speaking, and every other word from his mouth was Hebrew or Aramaic. I mean, it's the jargon of Talmud learning. It's yeshivish. And I had no idea what he was saying. So I just did it on my own for the first 3 years. But Art Scroll is not just a translation. It's an elucidation. It's an incredible team of rabbis teaching it to you. And that's why it takes an hour a day to read 1 page, because there's so many notes and explanations to read, so much to understand. But I knew I wasn't supposed to learn alone. And then we moved during that period to the neighborhood we are now, Hancock Park, which is a very Jewish area. And there was a shiur near near my house. So I tried again. I thought maybe this guy doesn't speak so much yeshivish. And of course he did, even more. But after 3 years of doing it on my own, I could follow it. And so I learned with those guys until 2012. And then I went to MetLife Stadium for the Siyum HaShas. I celebrated completing Shas, completing that cycle. And as that celebration was coming up, I called my friend David Suissa, the publisher of the Jewish Journal, who was a big fan of our first film, When Do We Eat, which you can come back around and explain. But we had made a movie during this period, very drenched in Judaism and in Torah. We were younger then. We made it an edgier.
It's about a wild and crazy Seder.
Wild and crazy Seder, very dysfunctional family, secular Jews, and a Baal Teshuvah son who brings teachings from the Rebbe into the house.
Incredible.
To a family that may or may not be ready for them. But like I said, some edgy material. It was rated R. But at any rate, it definitely developed a following. In fact, became a cult hit that people around the world watch every year as Passover is approaching. So David was a big fan of the movie. I took him to lunch. I told him this whole story about falling into Talmud. And I said, if I wrote that story, would you publish it? And he says, Sal, that is a cover story for the Jewish Journal. But don't you have more to say after 7.5 years of study than fits in one article? I guess. So write a column for us. So the column was called Accidental Talmudist. So was the cover story. And then we had learned, actually, by then our second movie, Saving Lincoln, but we had learned how to communicate with an audience using Facebook. And so we started a Facebook page, Accidental Talmudist, just to sort of promote the column, but it was the Facebook page that took off. And it was very good for us because instead of an 800-word column, some days it could be a video, some days music, some days just a saying from Pirkei Avos, some days a whole article or story. Nina developed.
What was it about? Like, was it only about Talmud? Was it only about the page of Talmud, or was it more at that point?
No, it wasn't just about Talmud at all. It was just what excites us about Judaism. So I write 2 vorts on the Parsha every week. We do holiday celebrations, holiday posts, just a tremendous amount of content. Every week I profile a different kind of forgotten hero of the Jewish people called Thursday Heroes. So, as you know, I mean, studying Gemara is not for everybody. So that's kind of the core. Sal teaches the Daf Yomi class now 7 days a week, streaming on Facebook and YouTube. But that's kind of for the elite learners. So we do a wide variety for total beginners. What is Shabbat? Just again, what I was saying earlier, everything we do is for everybody. And especially, as a Jew without a Jewish education, I can tell you it is extremely difficult to especially walk into an Orthodox shul, even any shul, but especially an Orthodox shul. It's incredibly intimidating. And Jews don't like to feel stupid. Jews are used to feeling smart and being educated. Sure. So it's such a big barrier to reach secular Jews because, other religions, you show up, you say, I want to be part of this, and you're in. But Judaism is such a high bar to entry with authentic Jewish practice. So it's really important to us. We feel like the way that we're reaching secular Jews that Chabad and Aish can't reach because we're not rabbis. You don't have to go to us. We're just going to come right to you on your phone, on your computer. So that's really what we're about because Sal has some Jewish education. I've got nothing, but we've still found a place, in Judaism for us. So that's kind of our mandate. We feel like we're uniquely positioned because we're Baal Teshuvos, because we've had such a crazy journey that we're able to.
And because we're communicators.
And because that's what we do, right? We're communicators. Right. We know how to make it interesting, entertaining, accessible. And we work really well as a team, both as writers and as content creators.
Well, I was going to ask you that, like, how does it work with husband and wife working together? Like sometimes there's a lot of conflict when couples work together. They say like, leave the work in the office, but here your work is
there's no leaving the work in the office.
Right.
Yeah, I will say that our biggest fights in our marriage have been about work.
I'm
You
sure.
know, we're a screenwriting team, and I think our strengths, we have different strengths that really complement each other, but we also have similar vision for the kind of movies we want to make. But so the way we work as screenwriters is first we get an idea, and oftentimes the idea will be something that we've both come up with. And then we just hammer out every beat of the story together. You need to know the entire story before you even start writing. But once we're putting words on paper, we cannot be in the same room together. So usually Sal will lay down the first draft, then he'll pass it to me. I'll rewrite. I'll pass it to him. He'll rewrite. You know, writing is rewriting, especially screenwriting. So we've got a way that we work, but it can be bumpy.
Do you
Because
have like do you have rules that, let's say, at the dinner table you can't discuss business, or no?
no,
Or
we
it's
don't
all
have
day
that
long?
rule. All day
Yes.
long, in
All day long,
bed.
every
We know
day.
that that's a good idea.
Right.
It would be a good idea not to talk about the work at dinner,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
but sometimes it's
But
hard to stop.
but you make it work. Do you ever get tired of each other?
No,
That's a great question. We're
I
together
love her.
all the
I
time.
love her.
Uh,
I might say I need to get out of the house right now,
Right.
but I can come back 5 minutes later, and it's that
what do you mean you
whatever it
need to
was,
get
it's
out of the
over.
house?
Yeah, whatever. If we had a heated thing, it's
I've
good
never
to
seen you
step
get
out.
out of the house.
Well, I go to the
What is
office.
this get out of the house?
Maybe take a walk
Our
around the
office
block.
is in our garage.
Our office is in our
Uh,
garage. We're sitting in
okay.
my office. Nina's is on the other side of this wall. So we could just pass the pages back and forth.
There's
That's
a
not
wall
too difficult.
between
Is
us.
there
There's a door between
is
us.
there a door? Yeah, is there a door that
Yes.
connects? Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Okay, you don't have to, like, go around the house to get to the other ones, no.
No,
Good,
no, 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 no.
yeah, okay, that's
But
interesting.
it works, thank God. We really bring different strengths to the
To what you do.
writing.
So
Then
I
I
wanna hear a li
direct, but
yeah, go ahead.
sometimes I have to ban the other writer from the set because she knows how I should be directing the actors.
Really?
But that doesn't even last 5 minutes. We're just very passionate about what we're doing.
Our
Um,
artists are sensitive by nature, so we don't
Right,
handle criticism well.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, and then especially as a husband-wife team, getting the criticism, that could be hard, that could be
Yeah.
touchy. Uh-huh.
yeah, and I'll tell you something. It would be so much easier for us if we weren't making Jewish movies. When Do We Eat was a battle, and now Guns and Moses has been a
Yeah, tell us
battle every
about that.
step of the
Why
way.
did you decide to do that with a Chabad rabbi? Like, what role has Chabad had in your life? I'd like to know more about that.
Chabad has had a huge role in our life. We're not Lubavitch ourselves, but our Rav is Lubavitch, Rabbi Yekusiel Kalmanson, and Rabbi Mendel Schwartz. And we just have so many Chabadniks in our life, both as mentors, rabbis, friends. So we have so much warmth, and how many Chabad houses have we been to when traveling? I mean, it's just the most amazing. We love the Rebbe, we love his teachings and his people and his shluchim, and so we're again, we're not actually Chabad, but we have and we have such a great feeling towards Chabad, and one thing that motivated us was my personal pet peeve is I just drives me nuts the way Jews are portrayed in media and have been for decades.
Mhm.
Jewish men are always whiny, neurotic, nebbishy, complaining, weak. And the Jewish women are always portrayed as overbearing, uh,
Entitled.
entitled, unappealing, unattractive.
Mm,
So the Jewish men can't possibly help but, of course, going with a non-Jewish woman. Who'd want to be with a Jewish woman?
right.
It's really hateful, honestly. Right now,
Yeah.
there's both a TV show, a very successful TV show, and a successful new movie about intermarriage. It's all you ever see is Jewish
Mm,
men and non-Jewish women. I think it's a really dangerous message for young Jewish girls and women. And it's
mm,
a really dangerous message for Jewish men because it totally normalizes intermarriage. The
right.
first movie as we know it ever made, first sound movie, was called The Jazz Singer. And it was about a guy who grew up in a frum home. He was the son of a cantor, expected to be a cantor himself. And, he wanted to make it in popular music. And of course, that led leaving his Judaism behind, leaving his family behind, going with a non-Jewish woman. And like that story has been told incessantly in the century since then.
Think about that. It's not the first Jewish movie. That was the first
movie.
talking picture.
Right.
Right.
It was a movie about
made by the Jews who left all their Yiddishkeit behind to run Hollywood.
A movie about a talented young man who, to achieve success, has to reject everything Jewish.
Right. And you decided you didn't want to depict that. You wanted to depict Judaism in a positive, favorable light.
Yeah, we wanted to depict Judaism. We wanted to depict Jews.
Is that your goal?
It's what we know. It's what we care about. You know, it's sort of it was a conscious decision, but it was also a natural decision for us because we're just so invested in this. We live it. We care about it. Making Judaism, making Torah accessible to everybody without dumbing it down. That's who we are. And so, in fact, between our second movie, Saving Lincoln, and Guns N' Moses, we took a long break because we were building Accidental Talmudist. And so after a while, we're like, whoa, what are we doing? Like, this is very important work. But we were also sent here. Our mission is, Accidental Talmudist is part of the mission, a huge part, maybe the biggest part, but it's definitely not the only part. We're filmmakers.
I think the biggest part is like, we're filmmakers. That's
who we
really are.
That's who we are. And so we have to use that, and we had to make a Kiddush Hashem with it. So we knew it was going to be a Jewish subject. I wanted to make a thriller because we hadn't made that type of movie before, and it's my favorite genre. So we started watching a thriller a day. As I said to you earlier, we're not scared to work hard and be disciplined. So if we were going to make a thriller, we're going to study that genre. And we watched a thriller a day in our living room. We set up a projector and a screen for 2 years, really doing a deep dive on this genre. And during that period, two things happened. One was I joined Maganam. This was 2019. Already we were seeing danger to the Jewish people. And in the Frum community, where we certainly are now, which is to say the visibly Jewish community, we're much more aware of it. I mean, people who are walking around looking like everybody else, they might feel very Jewish. They might be aware that there's general danger to Jews, but it's different when you wear a kippah walking down the street. And you wonder, like, is there going to be an attack? Because there have been a lot of attacks.
Especially where you live in California, yes,
especially in
Los
California,
Angeles.
but everywhere in America, in Europe,
Absolutely.
I mean, even more.
Everywhere, sure.
And so Rabbi Yossi Elfert, who's a Chabad rabbi, created this organization, Maganam, Shield of the Nation, which trains and licenses regular guys like me, volunteers, to carry a firearm. Now, I did not grow up around guns. I didn't know from guns. I didn't own a gun before I joined Maganam. But I said, okay, well, I'm used to training and learning and standing up for my community and being some kind of a protector. So I guess I'll do this. It was very difficult. And the kinds of learning and qualifications that we have to pass are more difficult than FBI agents have to pass.
Wow. I didn't know that.
But I was in it. And then in that same period, 2019, on the 8th day of Passover, there was a shooting in a Chabad synagogue in Poway, California. A woman, Lori Gilbert Kay, was murdered. The rabbi very courageously got up in front, tried to, talk to this guy, stop him, and had his fingers shot off. And then the gun jammed. And then thank God, then the guy ran out and more people weren't killed. I went down the next day to attend the funeral. And I interviewed Rabbi Goldstein and held his bandaged hands for Accidental Talmudist.
I think you live streamed the funeral.
I live streamed the funeral and I live streamed my interview with him. And then in the ensuing days, we watched him become a national figure, calling for people to do mitzvahs in memory of Lori and to make something good come out of that tragedy. We're very moved by that. And so Guns N' Moses is not the story of the shooting in Poway, but very much inspired by those events. There was a shooting at the beginning of the movie, but then everything is not what it seems. And the rabbi has a strong instinct that the guy that the cops have arrested is not the killer. And since they won't investigate, he does. And as he gets closer to the truth, the danger level skyrockets. for him and his family, and he has to learn how to use a firearm. And the training that he goes through in the movie is based on my own Maganam training. And people appreciate the veracity, the verisimilitude of that. And so we
Sounds
wrote
like,
it.
Sorry, go ahead.
right. No, so like while Chabad, the general attitude would be to bring more light, but not to, let's say, take up the arms, but it was definitely portrayed in a way that was very authentic to, from what I understand, is very authentic to Chabad and to the rabbi. You're definitely not making a caricature of the rabbi. You're making it as real as possible. And what I
What you
found really, yeah. So
oh, go
sorry,
on.
go
Sorry.
ahead.
What you found really what?
No, what I found really fascinating was also, like, you were talking about how you were really invested in your Judaism. You really proved how invested you are in your Judaism, because from what I understand, you are not, no one is doing this on Shabbat. No one is actually, none of the production is taking place on Shabbat.
I
And
mean,
that was,
so
even a way that you got a miraculous story, which maybe you can tell us about.
yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to give a little credibility to Sal, a little kavod to Sal. So, Jews have basically been have a hugely prominent role in Hollywood for the last 100 years. Everybody knows Jewish producers, Jewish directors, Jewish actors,
Mm,
Jewish executives, agents, etc. But never
mhm.
until Sal came along was there a Shomer Shabbos director. Doesn't exist.
Wow.
Okay. First
Incredible.
of all, there's so few Jews. Most of the Jews in Hollywood are intermarried.
Mm,
They're just completely disconnected from their heritage, their identity, and Jewish practice. And so Sal's actually a Shomer Shabbos director. It's never been such a
never
thing. And
been.
so never.
It's
The
incredible. It must be very hard also. There must be a lot of challenges to keep Shabbat and not
so yeah, I mean, we
in
so
an
we
industry that's not.
yeah, so but we're independent. We make our movies
Mhm,
independently. Sal raises the money because we must have creative control. Once
mhm,
you give control over to a bunch of godless suits in Burbank,
mhm, mhm.
you've lost. Maybe you're making a lot of money,
But
uh,
then you
Right,
get what Hollywood always
but
puts
you've
out.
lost
right.
your artistic creativity and your vision
And those
and
And your authenticity.
stereotypical,
your authenticity.
inauthentic,
Mhm,
and offensive depictions of Jews.
mhm,
And
mhm.
one thing really, so at the heart of our movie is Rabbi Mo, this lovable yet strong Chabad rabbi played by Mark Feuerstein, who absolutely hits it out of the park with this. But again, it drives me nuts. The Woody Allen, the Larry David. I mean, that shtick
Mhm.
has been done enough already. We
Sure.
wanted a Jewish hero who was strong, who was brave, who was a man of faith, and
Mhm.
we want to challenge
And
the
sweet.
stereotypes, and sweet and lovable, and we wanted to challenge the
And Chabad,
stereotypes
And
right?
Chabad.
and Chabad
And
and
Chabad.
Chabad. This is how people should see Jews, not the Harvey Weinstein, Bernie Madoff, all the bad
Right.
guys you see in the news. This is what a Jew should. This is what people should think of when they think of a Jew.
Absolutely.
Yes. And to follow up on the story that you
Yes.
mentioned, um, the hardest thing, the reason most movies don't get made, is raising the money. It's so
Mhm.
expensive. A novelist can write a book, a painter can paint a picture, but if you want to make a movie and it's going to be at all, movie like, like what people are used to
Right.
seeing in a movie theater, it takes millions of dollars.
Mhm.
I mean, we made our movie for under $5 million.
Mm.
That's very low budget, but that's
Mhm.
still millions of dollars. Now, and that means that every penny is precious to get that movie made, and everything is difficult. My producing partners applied for a California tax incentive, which California has to try to keep, production in California. So much of it has left the state. Movies are getting produced in Vancouver,
Mhm.
Canada, in Atlanta, Georgia, in Texas. And so, the place of movie making traditionally, there's just a lot of people out of work. And so they developed this tax incentive program. But generally speaking, the movies that get it are big studio pictures with budgets of 50 million, 60 million, $80 million. We applied for it because why not? We might as well try. And I was sitting at this desk, and we were kind of in our casting process, and really we've had so many difficulties and challenges along the
I'm
way, and we were
sure.
having some then. And I was very frustrated, and I said, God, please,
Mm.
Give me a sign that we're not going to roll
There's the
this,
sign, right?
that we're not going to be rolling this boulder up the mountain by ourselves. We need you. Please give me a sign. And at that very moment, the phone rang. And it was
Mm.
my producer, Amy. And she starts by saying, Sal, good news. Now, let me tell you, in every business, that's not a call you often get. In Hollywood,
Right.
of all the hundreds of calls, it's so rare that one begins with good news. I was like, what? What's the good news? And she says, we got the tax incentive. Now that ended up being worth over $500,000.
Hmm.
And it was huge for us.
Amazing.
And she said that, she got the call from this woman in Sacramento, not Jewish woman, who said to Amy, the reason I wanted you to know that we were very impressed as we read the application that your director is Sabbath observant and
Hmm.
that you are going to be shooting Sunday to Thursday.
Which is so unusual in Hollywood. Nobody shoots Sunday to Thursday.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, why this non-Jewish woman in Sacramento who, decides who gets which movies, which studios get these grants, why she was moved by that, why she was impressed by that, who knows?
Right.
But she was, and I just felt like, thank you, God. That was, we
It
stuck
was
to
a
our
little hug.
principles. It was
Right.
a little hug,
Wow.
exactly.
Yeah.
Not more than a wink. It was a hug.
Right.
We filmed Sunday to Thursday. There were kosher meals brought on set for Sal and for me when I was there. So that was good, but there was definitely some challenges. So this amazing set piece in the movie that takes place at a solar farm, it's spectacular. It's like nothing you've ever seen. It feels like something out of Hitchcock. So that was filmed in the Mojave Desert, and
Mhm.
there was no kosher food there. So Sal is directing this incredibly difficult action set piece, working, crazy hours in the desert, and there was just no kosher food. So he literally was surviving while it's an absolutely iconic scene on,
2 day shoot,
chips and
Ah,
protein bars,
tuna sandwiches.
tuna sandwiches, so there
wow.
was bumps in the road like that, but we were able to
Right.
overcome that kind of stuff.
Wow.
But it's definitely, like I said, you already heard some of it. Every step was difficult. But that was all. We wrote the movie and we shot the movie before October 7th.
Mm.
So we knew that Jews under attack who fight back would always be
Mhm.
relevant,
Mm.
but we could not have imagined a horror like October 7th, nor the explosion of Jew hatred
Mm.
that we've seen since, where I'm sure it was always there under the surface. Rabbi Tzvi Freeman says, you know what? It's good. It's good that they're being overt about it because they were feeling that before, and now they just feel free to say it out loud.
Mm.
I don't know how much I agree with that because maybe them saying it out loud emboldens others.
Right.
But they're just so comfortable calling for the murder of Jews, using the phrase globalize
Right.
the intifada, etc. And it's terrible and terrifying times. But it's times like this that we rely on Hashem. We need the Octus. We need the Jewish unity.
Mhm.
And so as we're getting the word out about our movie, every time we make a video, certainly we're using our social media channels because the movie's a Kiddush Hashem. It's an absolutely kosher film. It's no
There's no
profanity,
nudity,
no
no
nudity.
vulgarity. Yeah.
Mm.
It really, depicts a heroic and sweet and uplifting Shliach Chabad Rabbi, and the Rebbitzin is amazing also. And the two actors really studied with a Chabad Rabbi and Chabad Rebbitzins so that their
You would
portrayal could
never
be authentic.
believe that they're not religious in real life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow.
And so we get that. And so, and let me just say that, and there's so many people coming out to help us, but
Mm.
also every time we post about it, these people just, they say horrible things,
Mm.
anti-Semitic things, Jew hating things, put it in the comments under their own name. They don't care. And so we've got to, stand up against that kind of hate. And this is a movie that's good for the Jews. I hope everyone will come out and see it and support it so that there can be more movies like it.
Right. Wow. So looking back at your long journey and where you've come to till today, can you share with us some inspiration that keeps you, that holds you when you are on a day that you're having a difficult time or a challenging time? What from all these years of learning and teaching really connects you to to God and to what you're doing?
I mean, I would say just knowing that everything is from Hashem, that we thank God for the good, we thank God for the bad. It's so almost liberating. Like I fear no man, I fear no film critic, I fear no studio executive, I fear no Jew hater online. It's just everything is from Hashem, and it's really shifts the way
That's
you
beautiful.
experience the world. I mean, it's not something that I feel every moment. There's a lot of times when I'm starting to, I start to question or lose sight of that. But at the end of the day, if you just come back to this is from Hashem, everything is from Hashem, everything is good, that's to me what really keeps me going, in the toughest times.
That's really beautiful.
And I guess I would add something I teach my students all the time. And just people that I meet, and I ask them, what is the first commandment? What was the first commandment? And it's not the first of the 10 commandments that I'm the Lord your God, but what was the very first commandment that God gave into the world? And that was Peru Urevu, be fruitful and multiply. And that's normally interpreted to mean that you should have kids. There should be another generation that we can, that they can inherit the world from us, and we should transmit our values, etc. But actually, if it only meant have kids, I would suggest that it would have sufficed to say revu, multiply. So what does it mean to be fruitful?
Which
and be fruitful is first. Exactly. It's first. So, not everybody is blessed to have children for one reason or another. Not everyone has that opportunity and has that blessing, but everybody can be fruitful. And I think that what that really means is each of us has a mission. We were sent into this world for a purpose. The challenge is that we come with amnesia. As we're born in, we forget what our mission was. We agreed to that mission. We stepped up for the mission. God said, this will be your mission. And we said, I'm in. But then we're born and we spend our whole lives trying to remember and come back and recall what our mission is. Now, if you don't keep asking, what is my mission? What is my mission? What is my mission? You may miss it. But if you do keep asking, why am I here? What is my purpose?
What is the fruit that only I can bear?
What is the contribution only I can make?
Every human.
What is the problem that won't get fixed unless I fix it?
That only they can bring to
What is the project that won't get done unless I do it? Where's the person that won't get helped unless I help them? If you keep asking that question, then they will guide you. As the Gemara says, the way that a person wants to go, heaven will assist him. So if you waste that kind of energy on Gashmias, on just pleasures of the flesh, well, you'll be assisted to find that. But if you keep asking, what is my mission? Please, God, help me fulfill my purpose. Then the doors start to open and you start to see, that this is what I was sent to do. And that doesn't mean it'll be easy. It doesn't mean it won't be frustrating.
If it's not easy, you're probably doing the right thing.
Exactly.
Wow.
But it will become more and more apparent, what fruit you were meant to bear if you keep asking, what is that fruit?
That's beautiful. Beautiful messages. Thank you both. Thank you, Saul. Thank you, Nina. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your work that you're doing. Thank you for teaching authentic Judaism to people out there and for keeping on inspiring people with what you with the love of your life, with what you're really enjoying to do, and continued success.
Hannah. Amen. And you as well.
Oh man, we're really happy to be here because we watch your stuff all the time. It's great.
I get it in my inbox.
Yes, we get the Chabad.org email every day. I mean, so it's amazing. It's wonderful to be here.
That's great. Really perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hannah.
The Rebbe said, if you know an Aleph, teach an Aleph. I think Sal and Nina really depict that. It was beautiful how they started to teach authentic Judaism, how Nina says, this was us. We were learning it. We were the people who were beginning and we didn't know what to start and how to do it. And so we feel that we can teach it to others who were in a similar situation to us. And I think that was what's so beautiful about this interview is how you see how they really made this impact with people starting out in a time when the accidental Talmudist. It was accidental that Saul even opened the Talmud, but he then took it to an art form. He, together with Nina, took it to beautiful levels. starting the Accidental Talmudist, which is not only about the Talmud, but teaching authentic Judaism to people. They went on to these movies in Hollywood because they felt it was so important to depict Jewish people in a positive light. I love how they did it in a way that is so beautiful, keeping Shabbat, the only producers that is a Shabbat observant director. So much so that miracle happened where they were actually given that grant because she was the person who was deciding on the grant was so impressed by the fact that they held so strongly to their principles. And their message at the end I thought was really so beautiful as well. The message of just every person has something that they can give. Every person has an area in their life, something that they can give, fruit that they can give to the world. And what is the fruit that you are giving? What is the fruit that you are doing for the world? How can you use your talents and your capabilities and your unique self to truly give to the world? And they're an example of people who are doing just that. I'd love to hear what you thought of this interview. I'd love to hear which parts you liked and how Sal and Nina have inspired you in your day-to-day work. If you enjoy watching these interviews, I hope you are subscribed to Chabad.org/extraordinary. You can find us as well on YouTube. Please, please subscribe to us. Let us know what you like. Drop us a comment, drop us a heart. Tell us what you're thinking. We love to hear from you. We're so grateful that you are part of this extraordinary community.